Good afternoon, everyone. Pardon me, I've got a little bit of a chest infection, I think it might be, so the voice isn't the strongest today, but no worries in relation to that, hopefully. Just to say thank you again and welcome to the members who are present in the chamber and, of course, those members who've joined us online for the monthly meeting of the Planning Committee here in the Guildhall, Derry. So moving on to our agenda, and I'm going to ask Head of Planning Maura Fox to cover items number 1 and number 2, which is a notice and summons of meeting and members' attendance and apologies.
Thank you, Chair. Members are hereby summoned to attend the monthly meeting of the Planning Committee, which will be a hybrid socially distanced meeting to be conducted remotely via WebEx and also physically in the Guildhall, Derry on Wednesday, the 8th of March 2023. Alderman Alan Breslin.
Here, Maura.
Thank you. Alderman Keith Kerrigan.
Here, Maura.
Thank you. Alderman Drew Thompson.
Apologies, Maura, for Drew Thompson.
Thank you. Councillor Jason Barr.
Here, Maura.
Thank you. Councillor Raymond Barr. Councillor John Boyle.
Here.
Thank you. Councillor Angela Dobbins.
Here, Maura.
Thanks, Angela. Councillor Paul Gallagher.
And Shaw.
Thank you. Councillor Christopher Jackson.
And Shaw.
Thank you. Councillor Dan Kelly.
And Shaw.
Thank you. And Councillor Patricia Logue.
Shaw, Maura. Online.
Thank you. Councillor Kieran Maguire.
He's en route. He's actually broken down at Victoria Bridge, but he hopes to be here
Okay,
very soon.
no problem. Councillor Philip McKinney. Councillor McKinney? No. Councillor Sean Mooney? Thank you. So, Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Maura. And we'll move on to the broadcast statement, to agenda item number 3. I'd like to remind everybody present at this meeting in the council, well, not the council officer here in the Guildhall, or in attendance remotely, that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. This broadcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with our protocol. Due to your attendance at this meeting, you're consenting to being filmed and to the use and storage of these images for broadcasting or training purposes, and for the purpose of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. Members and approved speakers are reminded to only have your microphones and cameras on whilst speaking at the meeting and to use the chat facility to highlight a request to speak. And a copy of the council privacy notice may be found on the council website at derrystrabane.com. In relation to the next item on our agenda, declarations of members' interests. Members, I'll take verbal declarations at this point if anybody has any interest they feel they have in the business of today's meeting. Please now indicate either here in the chamber or in the chat box. Just to advise, I will be declaring an interest in items number 3 and number 4. I have spoken to the Vice Chair of the committee, and so Councillor Mooney will be stepping into the chair for those 2 particular items. Members, so I don't see anybody else with any declarations of interest, so we'll move forward now to chairperson's business. It's usually just, well, there's elements of housekeeping, I suppose, in relation to chairperson's business, as we usually find it in the planning committee. And just to advise you initially of the running order that we're going to have today. No, sorry, actually, I'm going to pass over to Maura, first of all, to advise on the removal from the agenda of a couple of items for decision, which will be deferred for site visits. So, Maura, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Members, 2 items have been agreed by the Chair and myself for site visit, and that is item 1, which relates to plan application in Belmont Crescent, and item number 2 relating to the housing development at Millview, Moorlough Road, Artigarvan. So in regards to the three remaining items for the agenda, you can see in terms of late items, 1 and 2 are not relevant for today, but members clearly would have had sight of them and understood the extra information that was submitted, emails and drawings, and a list of concerned residents. Information was received for the first item, and the second was a letter from the agent. But as I say, neither of these are required in terms of time today, as we are not taking those items. Item 3, we have a late item. You will have received that just on the 8th of March. That's this morning. And that relates to the proposed dwelling at Gortlake Road, Artigarvan. And that item, that information will be discussed as part of the planning application when we get to that stage. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Maura. So the items that will be removed today are items number 1 and number 2. Number 1 was a request from a member of the committee who requested we have a site visit in relation to that. I found myself agreeing with the reasons for having that site visit. And the second site visit in relation to item number 2 again, after discussion with Maura and her team, has felt that it's probably best and appropriate to have a site visit at that particular location as well. So we will be removing them, and that moves us then, of course, to the running order, which I'm sure you all quite appreciate now is relatively short, albeit sometimes it might look short and takes a bit of time to actually work our way through it. 3 days later, as Councillor Gallagher says. So the running order will be, we'll start with item number 5. And then items number 3 and number 4, which as I said already, Councillor Mooney will sit under the chair on my behalf, members. So that is that. Before we start with item number 5, evidently there is a late piece of information, which I'll give you the opportunity again to look at. But before we do go on, Councillor Kelly, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. Just before you move on from Chair's business, I wonder, would you be able to tell us the reason for the site visit of the Artigarvan one? Because I know from reading that it seemed to have been based mostly around an objection from statutory consultees. Particularly, there was a significant number of objections from DFI roads in terms of that application being turned down. So I'm just, I suppose, just tying up the loose ends of why a site visit would alter any of that, and just curiosity more than anything. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Kelly, it's probably best I allow the head of planning to explain the background to it. We discussed it in our pre-meeting this morning, and so on balance, I felt that given the information that Maura is now going to give you, that it was probably the wisest course of action to take. So if you want to take it on from there, Maura.
A request had been made initially by a member of the planning committee for a site visit, which the chair was deliberating over and had asked my advice in regard to that. And in the interim, we had information come in as a late item, and the agent seeking further time to address the environmental health issues. And I think I felt, given the position and where the proposal is and the residential amenity issues, having discussed it with the chair, that I thought members would benefit from a site visit, both to see the proximity of the residents in the area, but secondly also to consider the roads issues and the issues that are being raised by environmental health. So I thought that when I was asked, I thought that would be appropriate. Okay.
All right. Yeah. Okay. So I suppose in a sense to it, it perhaps gives a little bit of breathing space for further consideration by members as well, Councillor Kelly. So on balance, to my mind, certainly it seemed like a logical thing to do. So, and that was our running order. Also just to advise members that you'll all have received an email from Mark Hahn from LOC, the consultants. They are very keen to hear back the views of elected members, whether they be members of this committee or indeed other elected members in relation to the the work that they're doing on behalf of our council. So again, just to encourage everybody here in the room and indeed online to fill in those forms and return them to Mark Hand. The deadline for that, they would very much appreciate those returns by end of business on Friday. So if you can, get it in for Friday, but certainly I'm sure Monday at the latest. Absolutely the latest, if at all possible, members. So that's just by way of a little reminder. I know you'll all have seen that. And then finally, just to advise as well, and just before our meeting started, I'll come to you, Councillor Mooney, in a second. Just to advise as well, before the meeting started, senior officers also wished me to inform the committee that our special planning committee meeting, due to its proximity to the final full council meeting of the year, will now begin on Monday the 27th of March, not the 28th as advised. And so that's to allow us for a potential second day of deliberations for applications that may well be dealt with at that time. So just again to advise, if you want to put it on your diaries, that special council planning committee will now be on Monday the 27th at 2 p.m. And that affords for the run over into Tuesday the 28th. Had we done it on the 28th, we couldn't have come back on the 29th because, as you all know and understand, that is the date of the full council meeting. So 27th, 28th of March for that special planning committee, and that will be the last planning committee of this particular mandate, as I'm sure you're all aware as well. Councillor Mooney, and then I'll come to you, Dan.
Sorry, Chair, just that I've got a message from Councillor Phil McKinney. They said he's running late, but he should join us presently. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Sean. Councillor Kelly.
Yeah, just to confirm, Chair, that the running of the protocol usually means that the deadlines fall, for example, the 12 o'clock on a Monday to make representation for speaking rights, what have you. So will they just be adjusted and will people be advised accordingly just to make sure that happens?
I think I will have to defer to the city solicitor and that, but I think we can probably let members know in due course how that might change. I'm not sure. I haven't got an answer, and I'm not sure anybody has at the minute. So I'm sure that information will be presented for the benefit of members as well. Okay. So. That's that. Okay, so members, moving to item number 6, which is the matters arising from the open minutes of the Planning Committee meeting held on Wednesday, the 1st of February 2023, pages 3 to 12. Any matters arising from those minutes? And again, item number 7, matters arising from the open minutes of the reconvened meeting of the Planning Committee Thursday, the 2nd of February, pages 13 to 20. Any further matters arising? Okay, members, just bear with me a second. Again, a little bit of late information coming our way, and can we also mark Councillor Raymond Barr present, Maura? So just bear with me a second, members. Thanks. Sorry for the delay there. Okay, members, so we'll move on to item number 8 on the agenda, which of course are the planning list with recommendations for decision. The first item, as I advised, is LA 11 2021 0953/F. That's item number 5. And of course, as I said, you'll have received late information from Mr. John Corrie. So I'll give everybody 5 to 10 minutes to have another look through that, or indeed perhaps even get your very first look through it, and then we'll take it from there with our officer presentation. Okay, members, is everybody content to proceed? Now, I note before we do that Councillor Maguire's now joined us. I'm glad you made it. We heard you had a bit of vehicle difficulty on the way here, so glad you got here, Councillor Maguire. And I note online Councillor McKinney has informed us that he's having trouble with the sound. Councillor McKinney, I suspect you are the only person, and if you're having trouble with sound, I'm not even sure you can hear me.
Sure,
So
just to say, I logged out, logged back in again. I can now hear you loud and clear. Over.
that's great. Thank you, Councillor McKinney. And we're hearing you loud and clear over as well. Okay. So, members, let's move on with it. Number 5, which, as I said, is LA 11/2021, 09530. And officer presenting today for us is Laura. So, Laura, whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, members. Application LA 11/2021 0953 is an outline application for a dwelling on a farm and a domestic garage. The site's located approximately 70 metres north of 11 Garda Lake Road, and the recommendation is to refuse. This slide just shows the site location plan and an aerial image of the site. As you can see, the site is defined by the red line is cut out of a larger agricultural field located at the junction of Garda Lake and Ballysky Road. The eastern part of the site contains a small cattle shed, a walled enclosure, a cattle crush and a tin roof shelter, which you can see here in the site location plan and in the aerial photo. So this is just some images of the application site. This is the shed, the agricultural building, and the image at the bottom is from the point of the shed looking down towards Garda Lake Road. As you can see, the land slopes away in an upwards direction from the roadside, and there's a roadside hedge and some trees along that boundary. There's also a water course located along the southeastern boundary of the site, and a group of trees in the small parcel of land between the site and the road junction. The roadside boundary, as you can see, is defined by a hedge and some trees, and the western section and the western boundary of the site is defined by trees, and the northern site boundary is undefined there, as you can see in the site location plan. So this just outlines the policy context under which this application was assessed. The Strabane Area Plan, the SPPS, PPS 21, PPS 2, PPS 3, PPS 15, and then the design guide. So this is the farm map that was submitted with the application. It shows 4 agricultural fields there, and I've just kind of tried to draw on the application site in red just to give you some context of where it's located. So primarily this proposal is assessed under policy CTY10 of PPS 21 in order to establish the principle of the development. So policy CTY10 requires that the farm business is currently active and established for at least 6 years. So the farm business submitted with this application was allocated in 2020. Therefore, it hasn't been established for at least 6 years. DARE have also advised the business was only claim payments in 20 and 21. And the information that we had submitted during the processing of the application didn't demonstrate that active farming had taken place over the required 6-year period. So in terms of assessing this application, the applicant made a case that consideration should be given to the inherited entitlement as the land was passed from a previous owner, Michael Devine, to applicant's father, Michael McShane. So we didn't receive any farm maps or land registry maps for either Michael Devine or Michael McShane to substantiate those claims. Michael Devine's farm business is an entirely separate business from that registered to Lisa Peoples, which is the subject of the application. And Michael McShane's farm business is also a separate farm business. So therefore, in consideration of the first part of CTY10, the farm business, which is registered to Lisa Peoples, which is the farm business under which the application has been made, is not active and established for at least 6 years in accordance with Part A of Policy CTY10. So whilst we consider that the proposal isn't acceptable in principle, we have to consider it under the remaining criteria of CTY10 and all our relevant policies. So policy CTY10 also requires us to consider if there have been any development opportunities disposed of from the farm holding. We have carried out a search and we haven't found that to be the case, and also that the proposed dwelling can be sited to visually link with a group of buildings on the farm. So we've received a concept plan which is shown here in the slide, and highlighted in yellow is existing group of buildings, which you can also see in the photo. So we would be content that the dwelling can be sited to visually link and cluster with a group of buildings on the farm. As I said, we have to assess it under the remaining criteria. So policy CTY13 assesses integration in the design of the dwelling. This is just an image looking towards the site from Garda Lake Road. And as you can see, there's a group of trees there at the road junction. So we would be content that the dwelling will be screened from this viewpoint behind those trees. This is just another image from Garda Lake Road, looking again towards the site, which is further down Garda Lake Road. As you can see, the land rises and the dwelling will be sited in the part of the field where the land slopes down again beside the group of trees. And then just this is another image which just shows that the views of the dwelling will be limited to the roadside of the field in Garda Lake Road, where we'll be clustered with the existing buildings. So just overall, in terms of policy CTY 13 and 14, we wouldn't have any concerns in terms of integration or rural character, given the integration which can be provided and the fact that the dwelling is sited to cluster with the group of buildings on the farm. This is just a cross-section that was provided as well with the application, which would demonstrate how a two-storey dwelling would sit on this site. So just in terms of PPS3, there's DFI roads have requested visibility displays of 2 by 50 metres and a forward sight distance of 50 metres, and they're content that that can be provided. They noted that there is a bridge parapet to the south, which isn't within the visibility display, but they're content that that can be dealt with through reserve matters application. The site's not, in terms of PPS 15, the site's not located on a floodplain, though there's a water course along the eastern boundary. There's sufficient separation distance to enable maintenance of it in accordance with FLD2. In terms of natural heritage, we've consulted with NIA and ASCS, and we've received numerous reports. So we're content in terms of all the consultation and information provided that the proposal won't adversely affect any protected or priority species or habitats in accordance with PPS 2. In terms of residential amenity, there's sufficient separation distance to the nearest dwelling to negate any impacts in terms of privacy, overlooking, overshadowing, noise or disturbance. Therefore, the proposal complies with the SPPS in that respect. This slide just summarizes the consultation responses. Probably the most important is the fact that DERA have advised that the farm business was only allocated in 2020 and it only has claim payments for 2020 and 21. In terms of the rest of the consultees, you can see there that they are content subject to conditions and advice. And we haven't received any letters of objection or support in respect of this proposal. We did receive some late information which has been provided to us this morning, which you have a sight of. So in that late information, a number of receipts, copies of receipts have been provided. So in terms of the farm business registered to lease of peoples, which is the farm business under which the application has been made, we've only been provided with receipts for 2020 and 2022. All our receipts are invoiced to Michael McShane, which is the applicant's valet. So we have receipts there for 2017, 2018, 2019, 2021, 2022 and 2023. But this is not the farm business under which the application has been made. And nevertheless, that we wouldn't have enough information there to assess that proposal in its current form. We haven't received any land registry maps for Michael McShane, who owns the field and leases it currently to Lisa Peoples. And we would require those to assess that the field is part of the farm holding. We had requested information during the processing of the application, such as receipts and other information, but they've only been forthcoming today. So overall, just to summarise, the information provided doesn't demonstrate that the farm business is established for at least 6 years and does not provide evidence of active farming on this business over the last 6 years. So the proposal fails to meet criteria A of CTY10. And the later information submitted does not demonstrate that either the farm business, as per the P1C, is active and established, nor does it demonstrate that Michael McShane's farm business is active and established in accordance with policy CTY10. So there are no overriding reasons why this development is essential in the rural location, and refusal is recommended for the reasons set out there below. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Okay, members, to advise, there are actually no speakers in relation to this wishing to address the committee. Of course, I do draw your attention back to the late item from the agent on behalf of the applicant. And so further to that, members, I'll open it up to the floor for any questions that you might have for Laura or any of the officer team here today. So again, I'll give you a minute or so to put your thoughts together in relation to that. Sir Kelly.
Thanks, Chair. I wonder, would officers clarify just what succession arrangements are in place in policy when a farm is being handed on? So, what is contained in policy in relation to that that makes any, so that consideration is accounted for effectively within the policy, is what I'm asking.
Yep. The policy and the application talks about ensuring that it's not subdivided. Okay. So that's in terms of succession. I can put that up on the screen if anybody wants to have a look at it.
Anybody else?
I had my hand up there, Chair. Councillor McKinney.
Go ahead there, Philip.
Thank you, sir. It's just really, I was looking at a bit of clarity there with the officers. Have you obviously, well, I'm assuming that you have informed the applicant that basically you're still requiring this information for the years that are missing, which is in Mr. McShane's name. And as I think you said earlier, maybe I missed it, that you've had no comeback from them. Could you just give me clarity on that, on what exactly you have contacted the applicant about and asked for? Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Councillor McKinney. Yes, so the case officer dealing with the application throughout, so the application came in September 2021. We have been asking for a farm map or a land ownership map for Michael McShane, who is the applicant's father, who has clearly there's information that they are farming the land. That was never, we have received nothing to date. As of the information, the late information today, we received that last night. I think the email came in at 11:30 last night or something. So we've received nothing until those 4 or 5 receipts came in today, other than what is in the report and on the late information today.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Councillor
Thank you for that. Sorry, I'm having a few thoughts here. I'll maybe come back.
No, go, I'll come back to you. Okay, if that's what you want. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, please, Chair.
Yeah. Okay.
Please. Yeah.
All right. Councillor Gallagher.
Thanks, Chair. Again, it's probably like a legal question as such. We look at the planning history and the previous approval, and I'm thinking to myself as that if Mr. Devine had passed away, you know, and this house had been half built at that time that he had passed away, would that approval have been removed? And just, no, it's a legal question for myself.
Okay, so maybe an element of the hypothetical and all of that as well, of course, but I'm sure somebody might have a view on it. Suzanne?
I just would, like, clearly it's hypothetical. The previous approval was under a different policy context, okay? So the policy we're looking at now obviously requires the dwelling to be on a farm that is active and established, and for the business on a farm and the business to be active and established. So whether or not the house was could have been commenced, constructed, whatever, it's a totally different policy context, and we're looking at trying to establish the facts to try to get something over the line for CTY 10. The history obviously has expired.
Just want to clarify, it expired, a long time ago as well, in terms of, it was granted in 2001. So 5 years after that expiration.
Helpful.
The sort of point I was getting is it was more the principle set for the, and then would there be an inheritance of that? That's just where we're based.
It was approved 20 years ago under a different policy. So, it's something that's extant. No, sorry, it's expired. So, it's just, what relevance you would, or what weight you would attach to that. You would have to consider that, on merit. Yeah. So.
All right. Online, I have Alderman Kerrigan.
Thank you, Chair, for that. And very, very briefly, just asking the question. There is the difficulty in this scenario here in regards to ground being left. And sorry, just getting my policy here up here. I'm just asking the question to Suzanne or whoever here. In regards to this here, if someone is left agricultural land, if for example an uncle died and left you a farm of land and there was livestock to look about, and you were setting up a new farm business and there was an old dwelling house on the farm, there's no way then that you can actually build and live on the farm under that CTY 10 in regards to, unless he was farming it for 6 years in your own name. Is that the situation there? It doesn't seem. It seems pretty harsh. Is there no special circumstances for that in regards to inheritance? I know it's the same kind of line as what Councillor Kelly was touching on, but there doesn't seem to be the position for it, because I could take you to a handful of outlying farms where the old dwelling house has got into a poor shape, and maybe the individual farming has went into a nursing home or anything else. And if anyone, whoever takes that farm on, how are they to get planning? Is there no specific or special circumstance in regards to new farm businesses? Just asking the question. Thank you, Chair.
Alderman Kerrigan, I'm sure somebody will endeavour to answer that. Suzanne?
I'll try. Yeah, look, it is a very real situation, Councillor Kerrigan, for lots of farms and farmers, but we're looking at the facts of the case here, right? Clearly the farm has been handed on to Michael Devine. We would need information on their farm business to give any weight to any other evidence. The Lisa Peoples Farm Business ID is active, but it has not been established for 6 years, so it doesn't meet that first part of CTY 10. As an officer team, we feel there's no other evidence that would be determining that we would set aside CTY 10 at this stage to look at in the round. So, we're really looking at what we've been presented with, and as an officer view, considering the late information today, it still doesn't meet the policy, and there's no other evidence there that would suggest that we would have to set it aside. I don't know if that answers your question. All right.
Sorry, Suzanne, it does, but it still leaves the difficulty for other individuals on the case. I mean, realistically, the only way around this, in my view, or sorry, maybe not for this case specifically, but is the case that if you know your uncle's going to die and leave you a farm of land, get your name added on to his farm business ID before he meets his maker, is the only potential way of getting around CTY10. But no, thank you, Suzanne, for response.
Thank you, Alderman Kerrigan. Yes, Councillor McKinney is
Yeah.
on line first, and then I'm going to come to Councillor Kelly again. Councillor McKinney, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. CYT10, maybe I've got this wrong here, but the stumbling block seems to be the proof that the land was being farmed, because you know we got the late stuff in about receipts and that. Is there a possibility that we can maybe put this application on hold and approach the applicant again, and maybe stall it for 3 months to give them a chance to sort their own paperwork out and come back to our team of officers with the information they require? If that's possible, I'd like to know. Thank you.
Councillor McKinney, that would very much be up to members of the committee. We've probably done that before. My memory serves me that we have done that before, but I don't think we've quite seen this one out in terms of considering that as an option for now. But maybe, perhaps, let's see. Councillor Kelly.
Thanks, Chair. I think we have been here before in relation to this issue, and but from recollection, I don't recall another application meeting so much policy. In fact, this application meets every single policy from PPS 2, PPS 3, CTY 13, 14 and 16, and it is also compliant with the strategic plan and policy statement. The only aspect that this application is falling down on is under the discriminatory CTY 10. And members in this chamber, officers, will have heard me during the course of the LDP process discussing CTY 10 and this arbitrary use of 6 years. And I have written to DFI back in the day when we were doing that, asking them to justify where does the 6 years come from. And the drivel that I received back from DFI, I suppose, underpins that it was a nonsense figure. It was just grasped from the air. It is discriminatory, and no one will convince me then, and no one will convince me now that it's not, and that it's not compliant with the Rural Needs Act. It's not. There is no other business applying to council for a planning application who is made to jump through hoops and prove that they are active for 6 years and they have been in business for 6 years before they can receive planning permission. It is a discriminatory policy against rural dwellers. That said, I acknowledge that it is the policy and we have to take account of it. I'm very much aware that there is no transition arrangement contained within CTY 10 for this kind of scenario where you have the passing on of land, in this case from a relative to a father who's retired to a daughter, and it's the daughter who's then allowing this application to go forward for her brother, the applicant. So in that scenario, I think it's a bit of a blind spot in policy, because this is not, as the officer said, is an obscure thing that only happens now. It happens to a lot of people that are caught in this window. And as Councillor Gallagher has made clear, the only thing, or as Councillor Kerrigan made clear, Alderman Kerrigan made clear, the only thing could have happened is really if the uncle had died earlier, 4 years ago, you wouldn't have been in this pickle. Or if you wait for another 3.5 years, whatever, and submit your application again, you won't be in this pickle, because you will have avoided those discriminatory 6-year rule, because you already meet every other aspect of policy. In fact, there are many houses in the countryside that probably don't fit as well into the landscape as this particular one does, from my viewing. So my take on it is this. I've looked at the information in terms of the transition arrangements that have taken place, and I'm content that the farm has been active. And I've looked at the photographs that are contained in the officer's report, and it's quite clear that land is being farmed. There are crops clearly in the fields being harvested at whatever time the officer was out and visited the site. So it is an active farm, and I think for me, I'm content that this has been active, and this family has been active on this land since the 1980s, the early 1980s, according to the late information included from the solicitor. And I have no reason to question that, and I accept the bona fides of the solicitor and the submission in relation to that. So for me, the land has been actively farmed over this past perhaps 35 years by this family. There has been there is no allowance within policy for the kind of transition we saw in 2019 when a farm is being handed on within a family. So for me, what's left is the business ID that hasn't been active for 6 years. Again, going back to that discriminatory stuff. It hasn't been active because it wasn't handed on at that point, and I think this is the crazy aspect of this policy. And I don't have any axe to grind with officers in terms of the interpretation, because that's the way it is. But I do have an issue with the policy per se, and I have done since day dot. So for me, it comes down to this crazy thing that the person who had inherited the farm in 2019, who had established a farm business at that point, is now being penalised under the policy because there's no arrangement in place for her to acknowledge the fact that it was both her father and her whatever great uncle or whatever before that, in that very small gap. So from my perspective, Chair, I think given all of that, I would be prepared to propose that we don't accept the officer recommendation on the basis that that discriminatory policy in CTY 10 doesn't permit for that transition arrangement, and that we I accept that the active farming aspect of it has been demonstrated, and that leaves the farm business ID. And I think given the demonstrable transition arrangements that took place with the death of the uncle and the transition through the father to the daughter, I think I am proposing that we set aside the requirements of that policy in this exceptional case and overturn the recommendation to refuse.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. And just for me, just for the record, I find myself entirely agreeing with you as well. There's a situation where there's a significant anomaly here, which has created the situation that this applicant has found themselves in. And I suppose, I think as you very eloquently outlined, there's an element of a value judgment, and the evidence from our officer's report tells us, as I see it as well, there's farming going on that land. I don't need to be a farmer to know that. So that is a proposal from you. Councillor Dobbins actually was obviously listening to your preamble and figured out that that's what you were going to do, and has seconded your proposal today, Councillor Kelly. Unless there's anybody else with any further comment they want to make in relation to this, I'm happy enough to move it to a vote. Yeah. Okay. No further comment to be made. So, members, let's move it to the vote, Maura.
Thank you, Chair. Members, this is item 5, and the proposal is not to accept officer's recommendation. Alderman Alan Breslin.
For.
Alderman Keith Kerrigan.
Or Maura.
Okay. Alderman Drew Thompson sent his apologies. Councillor Jason Barr.
For.
Okay. Councillor Raymond Barr.
For, Maura.
Okay. Councillor John Boyle.
For.
Okay. Councillor Angela Dobbins.
For Maura.
Thanks, Angela. Councillor Paul Gallagher.
For.
Okay. Councillor Christopher Jackson.
For.
Okay. Councillor Dan Kelly.
Or
Okay. Councillor Patricia Logue. Councillor Logue. Councillor Come back. Councillor Cian Maguire. Thank you. Councillor Philip McKinney.
4.
Thank you. And Councillor Sean Mooney. Thank you. Unanimous.
Maura,
Thanks.
it's Patricia here.
Thanks,
I just
Patricia.
leave out a bother swapping screens there. I was looking at the application. So yes, I'm for too. Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Logan. Thank you, all members. Sometimes the gremlins do slip in and it's difficult to get online to even say that you're for or against something. However, members, as I'm sure you're all aware, that has been passed unanimously. So we'll move on. And at this point, I will have to take my leave of you. I have requested that Councillor Mooney, our Vice Chair, step on my behalf for the next two items, which are item number 3 and item number 4. So, Councillor Mooney, and if you just bear with us a wee minute or two, and we'll allow Councillor Mooney the time to settle on. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, members. I'm going to call item 3 now, and it is LA 11 2022 0432/F, and Malachy is the officer. So, do you want to go ahead, Malachy? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Item 3 is LA 11 2022 0432/F. It's a full plan application for renewal of application number LA 11 2016 0367F for proposed new 2-storey, 2-bedroom detached dwelling house. It's located at the side garden of 13 Northern Drive, and the recommendation is to approve. As stated, the application site is located at the side garden of 13 Northern Drive here, just to the north of the application site, as outlined in red on the attached site location map. Currently, it's the side garden area of number 13 Northern Drive, and just to give you an idea of the area there as well, it's a grass garden area at present. Again, images figures 2 and 3 show views towards the site. Again, it's this area behind the garden hedge to the side of number 13, which you can see the gable elevation on the attached images. Figure 4 shows the proposed block plan and layout of the application site with a front garden. As I say, it's a detached property with a rear garden as well. And again, this will show you the elevations of the proposed property. It's 2-storey property. This is a 2-bedroom at first floor level, ground floor level of a lounge and kitchen. So in terms of site constraints, there's no identified site constraints, but as alluded to in the description, there's a planning history of a proposed new 2-storey, 2-bedroom detached dwelling, which was approved in May 2017. This application was received prior to the expiration of that. It was received in March 2022. We've consulted a number of bodies, and you'll note from the report in your pack that there's been no objections from any of the bodies that we've consulted. And in terms of policy context, as set out in the report, we have the Derry Area Plan, the SPPS, PPS 7, the addendum to PPS 7 in relation to safeguarding character of established residential areas, PPS 3 in relation to access, movement and parking, PPS 12 in relation to housing and settlements, and some supplementary guidance in relation to housing existing urban areas and vehicle access standards. As outlined in the report in your pack as well, there's been a number of objections to the proposal. There are a number of issues in relation to light, privacy, density, character, parking, loss of green area, noise disturbance during construction, information on the P1 incidents in relation to water pressure and sewage in the area at present. Separate applications been submitted to benefit the applicant. And impact and character. The case officer has addressed each of those in detail in the case officer report. So the main policy consideration in relation to this application is set out in QD1 of PPS 7 in relation to new development for residential properties within the development limit. So there's a number of criteria within that in relation to design and layout, etc. So the site area is within the range of plot sizes and in keeping with the scale and character of the area. In terms of private amenity space, the officers believe that the provision for the development constructed is similar to other precedents in the area. The design, again, is in keeping with the surrounding residential character. The dwelling will be sited to match the front and rear building line of number 13 in terms of character again. It matches that and blends in with number 13 Northern Drive. There are no windows proposed in the first floor elevation adjacent to number 13, so the interests of privacy have been taken into account in the design. The rear garden measures 48 square metres and will be enclosed on both sides by a 1.8 metre high close border fence. And the existing wall will be retained as well. There's adequate separation distances from the proposed rear windows to 2 Northern Parade and the proposed dwelling under consideration. Therefore, there are no concerns re loss of amenity to existing and proposed developments. The proposal has been cleared by DFA roads as safe and achievable. And again, environmental health have been consulted and have no objections and have provided advice in relation to construction phase, noise, dust, etc. So again, the policy considerations have been taken into account, and as with all renewals, they're all taken on a case-by-case basis. It's important to note that there's been no policy change from the time of the last approval. All policy and guidance remains the same from the last approval in 2017. So having considered all material considerations and representations, including the previously approved history, the development plan, relevant planning policies and consultations, it is the officer's recommendation the proposal meets the requirements of the relevant policy and guidance, and approval is recommended subject to standard conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Malachy. I see from the sheet here that there's no speakers, so I'll pass over to the members if there's any questions for the officer. Or anybody online want any questions for the officers?
Chair, sorry. Councillor Lowe here, Chair.
Go ahead, Patricia.
Yeah, look, thank you, Malachy, for the report. I know there has been a lot of reasons for objections to this, and you have went through the actual application very well, but I think a lot of the objections would be around the parking, and you know that can be with the development of another 2-story building. You know, it's going to bring more parking along with it. So, you know, has this been considered in detail?
Yeah.
Yes, we have consulted the FA roads on the previous application and on the current application, and parking would have been a consideration taken into account. I think the view and consideration of both DFA road and officers is that there is adequate provision on street within the locality it's to provide for the level of accommodation proposed.
Well, I suppose if I could just come back there, look, I have a knowledge of the area and, you know, the university and all nearby and all our businesses, as well as the residential areas. I think parking as an issue in that area, and you know, I don't fully understand why DFA can't acknowledge it.
Sure, Councillor Logan, is that a question for Malachy or is it a comment, or would you like?
It's a comment.
A comment. Okay, thank you, Councillor Logan. Okay, members, well, there doesn't appear to be anybody else. Sorry, Councillor Gallagher.
No, Chair, just in the sort of absence of anyone making any noise, happy to propose we go with the recommendation.
Okay, Councillor Gallagher, is anybody? Councillor Jackson?
Thanks, Chair, and I suppose I completely accept the comments that have been made by Councillor Logue and the objectors. And I know the site, I know the street very, very well. But one of the things that that has to be taken into consideration in this application is the previous history, the previous approval on the site. And I know we have rejected applications based on the vicinity because of parking pressures. But this one's unique because of the previous site history, and on that basis, I'm content to second the proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Members, we have a proposal on the floor which has been proposed by Councillor Gallagher and seconded by Councillor Jackson. So on that basis, I'm prepared to, Kamara, could you take a vote, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members, this is...
Sorry, I think that the proposal is to go with the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Item 3, and this is a proposal to accept the officer's recommendation. Alderman Alan Breslin.
For.
Thank you. Alderman Keith Kerrigan.
For, Maura.
Thank you. Drew Thompson, his apologies. Councillor Jason Barr.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Raymond Barr.
For, Maura.
Thanks. Councillor John Boyle is declared an interest. Councillor Angela Dobbins.
For, Maura.
Okay. Councillor Paul Gallagher.
Or.
Thank you. Councillor Christopher Jackson.
Or.
Thanks. And Councillor Dan Kelly.
Or.
Thanks. Councillor Kieran Maguire. Sorry, Councillor Patricia Logue.
For.
Councillor Philip McKinney.
For.
Thank you. And Councillor Sean Mooney.
For.
Thank you. So that's unanimous. Thanks.
Thank you, members. We'll go on to item number 4 now, which is the follow-up application, LA11/2022/0433/F, and that's Malachy again. If Malachy could go ahead, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Item 4 is LA11/2022/0433/F. This is a full application. It's also a renewal of application. It's a renewal of application number LA11/2017/0749 for a proposed new 3-bedroom, 2-story detached dwelling house. It's located in the rear garden to the rear of number 13 Northern Drive, and the recommendation is to approve. The application site as outlined is to the rear of number 13 Orphan Drive, which is quite close to the previous application. It's a portion of the rear garden of that property known as 13 Northland Drive. Again, there's a parking area out to just below the site, outside the existing boundary of number 13. And there's a number of properties, existing properties to the north of the site and the northwest of the site. The attached images shows the proposed location located behind this existing stone wall. You've seen as the parking area referred to in the report. In terms of the block plan, the agent has submitted a block plan as a full application showing the footprint of the proposed dwelling and the proposed rear garden and amenity areas and front side gardens also. This is a detached property, so it'll sit on its own in that current garden area of number 13. And here's the elevations, and you'll note from the elevations there's a number of proposals for obscure glazing given the proximity to existing properties in the locality. And the proposed floor plans are set out here in this figure 6. Again, there's no site constraints in relation to this application site. And there's a planning history in the locality, and there's I suppose the significant planning history relating to this application is the proposal to renew LA 11/2017-0749, which is still live and doesn't expire till July 2023. Like the previous application, we consulted a number of bodies and there's no objections. The FA roads have related again referred to on-street parking in the locality. In terms of policy context, it's the same policy context as the previous application, just the SPPS, the area plan, PPS 7 and its addendum, PPS 3, PPS 12, and the relevant supplementary guidance is set out in the report. And again, we've had a number of representations from neighbouring properties raising similar issues, and our consideration of those are set out by the officer in your pack in the report. Again, the application subject to PPS 7, QD1 in particular, and policy LC12 of the associated addendum of PPS 7. So in relation to this particular application, the applications for one dwelling within a wider public area, there's 2 similar dwellings have been approved in the locality. 2A Northland Way, as well as the previous site that we considered to the south of 13 Northland Drive. The layout, footprint and orientation of the dwelling is similar to the existing road at Northland Parade to north at the front of the dwelling, faces onto the road and follows the same building line. It's considered that scale and mass of the dwelling proposed is appropriate to the character and topography of the site, and the layout reflects the established layout of the overall character. There's no issues in relation to heritage or natural heritage in relation to the site. In terms of private amenity space, adequate provision has been made. There's approximately 70 to 80 square metres, which is within the recommended minimum standards as set out in Creighton Places. There's a provision of a pedestrian footpath, a movement pattern has been provided within the site, which will connect to the existing public road and footpaths. The proximity of the site to the city centre, central area and bus routes has been considered and given weight within the report. There's also an existing lay-by to the front of the application site, which can allow for approximately 8 vehicles on street. The agent was requested to carry out parking surveys of the area for the previous approval and demonstrate the parking was available at this location. So the proposed development will not have an unacceptable impact on parking amenity for existing residents in the area. Whilst the design of the property is slightly more modern than those in the area, it wouldn't be considered out of character. The dwelling will be finished in external render to match the adjoining houses. So some of our materials, etc., will be used. That is seen elsewhere within the north of the state. And I think it's important to note that the first floor gable window will have obscured glazing, and therefore there'll be no overlooking to the rear garden of number 13. The bedroom windows to the rear will overlook only the bottom corner of garden number 15 Northland Way. And the proposal follows the same building line along Northland Parade, and there are no windows proposed in the side elevation adjacent to Northland Parade. So in terms of policy consideration, similar to the previous proposal, there has been no change in any of the policies that were considered in the original approval, and there's been no change to any of the planning guidance. And our officers are satisfied there's been no change in circumstances in the locality since the previous approval. So having considered all material considerations and representations, including the previously approved history, the development plan, relevant policies and consultations, officers recommend that the proposal meets the policy requirements and recommend approval for this item. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Malachy, for that presentation. And again, there is no speakers on this, so I'll put that to the floor if anybody wants to ask any questions of the officer. Anybody online? No questions then, so does any of the members have a proposal?
Chair,
Councillor Jackson, thank you.
I'll propose we accept the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Gallagher. Thank you, Councillor Gallagher, for seconding that proposal. Maura, could we put that to vote, please, on the basis that there's a proposition for the accept the officer's recommendations? Thank you.
Okay. Members, this is item 4 and it's proposed to accept the officer recommendation to approve. Alderman Alan Breslin.
For.
Thank you. Alderman Keith Kerrigan.
For, Maura.
Thank you. Alderman Drew Thompson, his apologies. Councillor Jason Barr.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Raymond Barr.
For, Maura.
Thanks. Councillor John Boyle declared an interest. Councillor Angela Dobbins.
For Maura.
Thank you. Councillor Paul Gallagher. Councillor Christopher Jackson.
For.
Councillor Dan Kelly.
For.
Councillor Patricia Logue.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Kieran Maguire. Thanks. Councillor Philip McKinney.
For.
Thanks. And Councillor Sean Mooney.
For.
Thank you. That's a lot unanimous.
Thank you, Maura. I think that's the end of the planning list of the application. So if somebody could manage to sequester the chairperson.
Okay, members, we'll move on. Thank you to Councillor Mooney for standing in. I trust all went according to plan for Councillor Mooney and members of the committee. So, members, an unusual kind of a day for us today, I know. That is all of the items that are listed for decision today on the planning application list. However, we have two items at number 9 and 10 that you may well wish to consider: the LDP progress update and timetable, and then at number 10, the LDP operational procedures for LDP steering group. So the first item there will be taken by Prontius. So go ahead, Prontius.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. The purpose of today's report is to update members on the recent progress with the LDP preparation. Specifically, this paper advises members of the response from DFI Planning, from the PAC, and our progress towards the independent examination. And in particular, this paper brings forward a revised LDP timetable for members' approval. The previous update, members to Planning Committee, was on 7th of September 2022, and members may recall that it advised about the submission of the LDP draft plan strategy and its documents. It was to DFI, and that had happened back in May 2022. Following that time, DFI had requested some other information in August 2022, and that was submitted immediately to DFI. So, members, in terms of progress since that last update meeting, DFI have undertaken their initial assessment, and they wrote to the council on 20th of September 2022, stating that they had we had been successful in passing its initial checks, and that they had referred the LDP to the PAC to cause an independent examination to take place. Following that time, officers were in contact with the PAC and made formal submission electronically and with all the documents to the PAC. The Planning Appeals Commission has subsequently appointed a programme officer in October, and just before Christmas in December, the PAC wrote to the council to say that they had appointed Senior Commissioner Diane O'Neill to undertake the independent examination. So, members, the current situation is that PAC Commissioner is undertaking a series of checks to ensure that all regulatory steps have been taken by the council, and she will try to identify if there's any fundamental concerns about the soundness of the plan. Following those checks, the Commissioner may request further additional any evidence, or they will proceed to arrange the formal hearing sessions. The council has been in contact with the PAC and has written on a number of occasions, just really to pursue the dates for the independent examination. As set out here in the report, members, this is all in accordance with the Development Plan Practice Note number 10. Therefore, as stated above, the council is currently awaiting to hear from the PAC with any initial queries, but subject to getting past these initial assessments, we would anticipate or hope that the independent examination be likely to commence in hopefully before the summer, hopefully in June 2023, and then hopefully then commence or recommence immediately after the summer. So that's the timescales, members, that we're anticipating at this stage, but it's very much in the hands of the Planning Appeals Commission as we wait. The report then goes on to advise members that there was a meeting of the LDP steering group again at the end of February there. Members received an update on the progress, as we've just discussed, towards the independent examination, and members were briefed on the preparatory work which is ongoing for the independent examination. Specifically, officers have been working with an experienced barrister and certain actions have been identified in preparation for the independent examination. So that is ongoing. The members of the steering group were given an outline of the feedback from the barrister and the various consultation meetings that we've held. The steering group also discussed the potential and the need for a protocol procedures for the council and members to undertake at the actual independent examination, which we hope is coming up, and that was dealt with in the following item, item 10. The steering group also discussed and agreed a revised draft, a draft of a revised timetable to fit in with those anticipated timescales. So the report, members, it sets out, we give a recap of the purpose of the LDP timetable. There's been a number of revisions before over the recent years. We set out the reason for the revised timetable, and there's a copy of that draft revised timetable set out in the appendix. Basically, we're working towards the anticipated independent examination happening in Q1, Q2 of the upcoming financial year. So we're working towards, as say, June and then probably September, October. It will take about 8 weeks overall. So as per the requirements and the regulations, officers have consulted with the Planning Appeals Commission on that revised timetable and also with DFA informally. Hopefully the PAC will in the very near future be in a position to come back to the council and agree the dates for the independent examination, and hopefully they will accept that it's reasonable to have it in Q1 and Q2. So members, the recommendation is that members note the above progress update report and agree to the issue of the revised LDP timetable, subject to the consultation, and if we get any firmed updates from the PAC over the next couple of weeks, that we can include that. But basically, if it's okay, we'll hope that it's in Q1, Q2, and that's probably it. If there's nothing significant, that's no significant changes, that's what we would anticipate to publish in a revised timetable. So, members, that's the recommendation. Happy to take any questions on it.
Thank you, Precious. So as Precious indicated there, members, any questions in relation to that presentation, that paper, or observations? If not, we'll move swiftly along. Councillor Kelly.
And I suppose for completeness, Chair, obviously there's an election this year and that's going to have an impact on the council's timetable, but does that have an impact on the PAC and their work? And do they continue apace? And if so, is there a cut-off date beyond which, if we haven't received notice from the PAC, it can't happen before the summer effectively, and we would be pushing back into the autumn?
Thanks, Councillor Kelly. Actually, I think this was discussed. Some element of that was discussed in the steering group. So, Maura? No, go ahead, Maura.
I thought the chair, because we did discuss that at the LDP steering group, the PAC will continue to work. You asked the question whether it affects them. They will continue to work and prepare, and the officers will prepare. So it doesn't hold back the preparation towards the IE. But the next paper explains the position we'll be in when an independent examination commences. But at this stage, we haven't been given a date, and we would have imagined if we were likely to get a date in April and May, we would have known by now that was the date. They give you a run-in. There's a run-in period from our previous understanding of previous examinations. So it shouldn't affect that timeline.
Okay. Yeah. I think basically throughout the course of the discussion in the steering group, Dan, it was effectively because of the time frame, very likely this wouldn't happen until after the the election and into the new mandate anyway. That's a simplification, I suppose, of it. But actually that segues quite beautifully into the next item on the agenda, which is item number 10 in relation to that. I don't see any other questions in relation to item 9, so we'll move to item 10, and Eamon, you're going to take us through that. Sorry, thank you. Yes, I do need a proposer and a seconder for that recommendation in the previous paper, proposed by Councillor Mooney, seconded by Councillor Kelly. And now, thanks for keeping me right on that, Eamon.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. Members, as has been previously stated, this item follows on from previous item in that during the independent examination, which will be a live process, there will be a need for council where possible to react and input during live sessions. So this has been discussed, as the chair has pointed out, at the steering group meeting, which was held on the 22nd of February. And basically what is being put in front of members here today is a protocol that would operate during the independent examination live session, so that the council can put forward a position on any queries that may be put forward. Basically, members, the scheme delegation would only operate during the live sessions. And again, the LDP steering group would have to meet during that period at least once a week. Additional meetings could be convened as and when necessary. And the meetings would be conducted physical, virtual or hybrid to ensure that the members of the steering group had every opportunity to attend. Basically, there are two issues which may arise during any live session, and those are changes which would be considered to be non-substantive, which basically members could be changes to a typo, a spelling mistake, an emphasis, etc., and substantive changes where there would be a consideration in terms of the impacting on what the actual policy area is. Two things came up during the, I suppose, the LDP steering group meeting, which have been amended or proposed amendments within the protocol, and that would be that the decision making would require a quorum of at least 50% of the members of the steering group to be present before any decision could be taken. And just following that, it's is put forward for members' consideration whether members wish this to be unanimous in terms of any decision that is taken by the steering group, or whether it is to be majority. So that will be amended in line with whatever members discuss here today. So as I say, members, the independence examinations have been in operation for some of our colleague councils, and different schemes have been put in place. This is very much in line with schemes that have been accepted, but again, it has been tailored specifically for the purposes of our own council, and of course our steering group is part of the formal part of the LDP decision-making process. So members, happy to take any questions, and the recommendation is that obviously that protocol would be adopted and put in place subject to any amendments that members might have. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Eamon. So again, members, there you have it. If anybody has any questions or any thoughts in relation to that, now, of course, open to the floor. Anybody? Mr. Kelly?
Chair, it's just picking up on that second last paragraph on page 140, where how the group arrives at an agreement. I suppose given the fact that the draft plan strategy had unanimity from the council chamber, it would be our position that that would be the best option to have in there, that in the first instance we should be aiming to get unanimity of the steering group in terms of the decision making. That said, it's not an either or, because there probably will be occasion when that's not achievable. And I think it would be unfair to the steering group to tie their hands in that regard. So I think whilst it should read, in the first instance, you know, there's an attempt to get unanimity across the steering group. Where that doesn't happen, then I think there needs to be a default where then you maybe look at a majority or a supermajority or whatever, so that there's an agreement in place so that we're not leaving the steering group sort of high and dry. So in the first instance, unanimity, but where that can't be achieved or where there's just, you know, just irreconcilable differences in people in terms of their, I don't know what's going to come back from the PAC, and none of us probably do, but I don't know that it would reach that situation. But I think if you put in the unanimity thing, you need it by almost as a due process thing, almost have to have that sort of default position of, and you go for a majority if you can't get unanimity. And that just keeps the whole thing flowing because it's going to be moving quite quickly. So that would be my thoughts on it. I don't know if that's helpful.
Just to say, Councillor Kelly, I see where you're coming from. Don't disagree with you either. But the matter of how this works over that short period of time, obviously, expediency is the importance. It's how we feed back and how we do that quickly. And so this is the suggested best option, really. So in effect, for the benefit of everybody else, you're effectively saying it would be desirable to reach unanimity, but in the event that we can't, then we would move to the next obvious thing to do, which would very likely be a majority of the steering group. Bearing in mind that the current makeup of this planning committee has a steering group with 7 members on it, which is half the planning committee. And that may well not change in the next mandate. It potentially could do as well. You looking to come in, Councillor? No? Microphone, Sean.
Sorry, Chair, just according to the document, there's 6 members of the steering group, rather than 7, so would there be any merit in widening it out? I don't know.
Actually, it was identified that there should have been 7. Actually, at the steering group, it was identified that there should have been 7, but there was an administrative error and a member wasn't invited. So if it were to be appropriate, then that would be the 7. Okay, but as I said, this is very likely going to happen in the next mandate. Councillor Mooney, in truth. Are you looking to come in more or no? No.
Sorry.
I'm going to give him a chance here.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, sorry, members, the steering group has always operated on the basis of the representation of the committee. And it was pointed out to us that there was it was pointed out at the steering committee that as there had been a change of membership, there's another independent member on the committee. So that member could have, you know, on the basis of how the group has been put together previously, that member could be invited on to the committee if necessary. So, but it isn't, you know, it is always operated on the basis of representation on the current makeup of the planning committee. It is quite likely, members, that after the election and the AGM, the steering committee will be, you know, will have to be reappointed, and we'll deal with matters then if we need to in terms of the numbers.
Was bearing in mind that obviously we'll be moving into a new mandate, and who knows who'll be on the planning committee. That's the reality of it. And so there's 1 or 2 already saying, well, I won't. Not me, but yourselves. And maybe I won't be either. Who knows? So who will? Probably the more pertinent question, Councillor Gallagher, will be who will be on the planning committee and the new mandate. But sure, that's all tale tale in the future. So members, if you're all content with that, it's going to need a proposer and a seconder for that direction of travel. How's it me?
Chair, I'm content with Councillor Kelly's proposition that anybody who's going to be on that body after in the new mandate should obviously seek everybody should seek cohesion, and if not, then there should be a default, and that default should obviously be a majority, but happy to propose that.
Chair, I'll second it. And I just want to say, your throat must have recovered, but you haven't shut up.
Sorry about that. I was outside. You know, whenever I got the wee break there, Councillor Logue, I'm honestly slip a wee,
Some sore throat that is.
So you're second on that, Councillor Logue. I had a wee, what do you call those wee capsule, strepsol things. So it seems they've done the trick. Patricia, thanks for your good wishes. So members, are we all content to proceed on that basis? Yes. If I don't hear anything more, then we'll move on from that. Okay. So open for information, numbers 11, numbers 12 and 13 and 14. Members are there in your pack in front of you. Should anybody wish to bring up any of those matters, please do indicate now. All right, then. And we'll move on. Can I have a proposer that we move into confidential business? Councillor Mooney proposed, seconded by Councillor Dan Kelly. We'll just give it a minute until we're off air.